Welcome back, everyone. Rock and Stone. I wanted to pop in for a minute and just say thank you. You know, in the past 2 weeks, I've cleared 500 subs, and mind blown. I would have never thought that would have happened. You know, if you'd asked me 2 years ago, it was kind of a hobby thing, and I figured I'd throw some of my painting videos out there as I did the Deep Rock. And, you know, between that and some reviews and different things have kept building up. Positive feedback, and it's all appreciated. So I'll keep on keeping on. Beyond that, I did get the buy me a coffee because someone had messaged me and asked if they could, you know, donate a coffee to me for all my efforts, and truly, you know, appreciate that. So I'll throw that in the description, and a link to my little Discord servers there if you ever want to get on, share some photos, ask more in-depth questions, what have you. There's all of about 5 or 6 of us on there right now, but you know, it's another way to get a hold of me or get more in depth on something if you have questions on things. So feel free to hit me up there as well. Anyhow, enough rambling. Let's get on to episode 18, the Stingtails.
Stingtail! Don't let it get ya!
Let's jump right in here. Right off the bat, I noticed after I primed that there's a horrendous mold line across the rear side of the Stingtails, and it extends onto the rock a little bit too in some cases. So if you got your dull or not so dull X-Acto knife or whatever scraping tool of choice you have, I would try to knock those down a bit because they really show up when you're dry brushing that area and after the priming. So I did go back and scrape these down a bit after I noticed it. I start out by doing some Brain Matter Beige, the old school war paint, and I dry brush that on a lot of the peaks and ridges and, you know, the parts I want to lighten up and have more highlight on. So for the first Stingtail, this one is pretty much going to be primarily a Speedpaint 2.0 paint job. I start out with 3 parts Noble Skin, 2 parts Gravelord Gray, and 2 parts Speedpaint Medium, going for a gray-brown color. I didn't want a dark brown particularly, making sure I don't puddle up too much as I go here. This color combination created a nice kind of subtle gray-brown, and it went on nice and smooth. I find thinning things with the Speedpaint Medium definitely helps reduce some of the coffee staining effect you get. For the underside of the tail, which becomes the top prominent part as it bends up, I want something a little poppier, a little eye-catching. So I went with 2 parts Nuclear Sunrise, 1 part Fire Drake, and 1 part Speedpaint Medium. Kind of an orangey brown. Aged Hide and Speedpaint Medium 1:1 to do the the fleshy bits around the mouth and tusk area there. On one of these two I painted up. These are the actual in-box models. I went with an extra aged hide glaze over the tail as well to kind of give it a little deeper, richer color. You can see on the right is the glazed on aged hide over that original color, and then the left is the original. So it added a little richer tone, a little deeper colors. I'm also noting that I might have a defective paint. I don't know if I'm still in line to get a free one if I bother them or not. I might reach out, but you can see there's a lot of chunks down in there, something with the pigment they use, I guess. For the underbelly, I did 2 parts Nuclear Shuunrise, 1 part aged hide, and 1 part Speedpaint medium. I wanted that to be somewhere between the face, flesh, aged hide, and the color of the tail. You know, kind of the transition between the two segments of the body. With the leg joints, I did the same combination as the underbelly, Nuclear Shuunrise, and aged hide. On one of them, I also tried putting a little glaze of the Nuclear Shuunrise kind of over the top part of that aged hide on the face. I go back with some more Breen Manor Beige, try to cover up all those orange splotches on the tusks, the legs, you know, the arms, rock, anywhere. So I tried to go a little bit lighter on the legs. So I did a 1-to-1 ratio of the Gravelord to Noble Skin and 1 part Speedpaint medium. You see I do a couple coats to kind of build up the color on the legs as well, leaving those middle mounds so they stay a lighter color. For the base and the rock, I wanted to try to find a complementary color best I could on the old color wheel here. So a bluish rock in this case. So I went with a drop of Occultist Cloak, 2 drops of Gravelord Gray, and some medium. So it's just going to be a slight blue tint, not super blue. For those teeth, tusks, whatever they are, I will go with tusk. I went with pallid bone, 2 parts to 1 part medium. I also, on one of the 2 models, skimmed a real thin glaze of that pallid bone across the carapace. Kind of added a little yellow-brown tint to everything. I always fiddle futz around and experiment, but that's, in my mind how I get better, how I learn how things work together, and it's just kind of my flow. And then I usually have some variety within my armies if I'm painting up 2 or 3 of the same thing. For the basing around the rock, I decided to pull out this Vallejo desert sand terrain paste. Talk about some messy ass stuff here, folks. I mean, it gets everywhere. It was sticking to the gloves, the painting mat. It's just messy. I gotta figure out a better way to apply this stuff. And then I usually just take like a wet paper towel and really push it along those edges to clean off the overflow. Then I came back and just sprinkled on some random little terrain pebbles I had. This was some unbranded stuff from the local Michael's brick and mortar hobby store. And then pick your black ink. I have some Liquitex, some Artist Loft, some Daler Rowney. You know, they're all acrylic black inks. Sometimes I put just a little matte medium in there to take the shine off. The next one I had in mind was kind of a green and tan combination. I was going to do a green and red, with the red being that part of the tail, but I thought it's a little too Christmassy, a little too much when I started playing with that color combo. So I played it safe. Pallid bone for the tail top there, and the hook or the stinger. For the main carapace, I did algae green to Speedpaint medium 1:1. For the inside of the mouth and the flesh around the tusks on the outside, I went with Goddess Glow. That's an Army Painter Speedpaint 2.0 color. For the underbelly, I went with Goddess Glow, but I combined that 1:1 with some Murder Scene to really darken it up a bit more. It's a little more purple, I guess, but it's in the shaded underbelly. I wanted something different. For the area between the body and the legs, I went with the warrior skin for that color. And then back to pallid bone again for those tusks or mandibles or whatever these things have poking out of them. For the legs, I wanted to mix in some acrylic paints for the highlights. I went with Commando Khaki and Pale Sand from Army Painter Fanatics, but I wanted to yellow it up a little bit, so I actually took a little bit of that golden brown from Pro Acryl, which I also love, and made a combination of the three, so it's kind of a khaki yellow. I apparently liked it enough that I decided to put it on the tusks and the stinger tail as well to do some highlights and accents on those as well. For the rock on this one, I went back to Vallejo Earth color with a little thinner. Doesn't have that coverage of Fanatics, but I got all these great paints. I'm going to mix them in where I can and keep utilizing them. No point just letting them go to waste, right? But that isn't to say you can't take those older ones and mix them with these cool new paints. So I took some bright ivory and some golden brown, both from Pro Acryl, to kind of make the next lighter khaki sand colored to move up to from that earth. So the earth was just the base coat. I layer on some highlights on top of that, and then I go eventually lighter, more bright ivory, then golden brown. After some highlighting, I move over to a different color of the Vallejo texture paste. This one is more of a reddish brown, I guess. Brown earth. I figured it offset a little better with the green and tan scorpion and the color of the rock versus the plain yellow desert sand I did on the last one. And for the rock sprinkles on this one, I actually used some of the Army Painter branded brown battleground rocks. They kind of have a reddish tint to them, I think a little bit reddish brown. For Stingtail number 3, and I started just whipping through these fast. These are really color test models. I went with the Sand Golem, which is kind of a nice orangey yellow. I just used that here on the underbelly and on the bottom side of the tail. And then I did Cloudburst Blue, 2-to-1 with some Speedpaint Medium. I'll have some better complete shots at the end. I'm not spending too much time on these, but you'll see all the different color palette varieties in the final shots. Peachy flesh for the mouth and area around there. Pallid bone on the tusks again. So I wanted to try to create that same gray-brown color. Took dark umber and combined that with a dark gray-blue. These are out of the basic set from Pro Acryl. The camera doesn't capture it that well, but it is kind of a grayish brown. It presents more as brown here on film, it seems like, but there is some gray to it. I decided to try out some Pro Acryl black wash I bought as well. I thinned it a little bit. The brush was pretty wet. I was just going for a thin glaze to kind of smooth out things. I went ahead and hit everywhere where I hadn't painted yet to put some color down in the grooves too. And so tan flesh and orange. Again, let's just say I'm trying to mimic what I did with the speed paint here. And I was trying to come up with a similar palette to see if I could do or achieve the same results using traditional acrylic paints. Went with that same kind of fleshy orange color, and then I started highlighting up more with tan flesh in the orange to create a lighter, more fleshy color, and try to do some highlights on the ridges there and stuff on the back. Bright ivory. This is a color I have grown to like a lot. It's a white, but it's got just that hint of yellow for that ivory part. So I base coated up all the tusks with that. decided to use pure golden brown to highlight those little leg points. I think I slathered a little bit on the tusks there. I was almost trying to make that the highlight color versus a white tip. It's more the golden brown tip on the tusks. And then I went back and did some actual just golden brown highlights on the tail as well, along the edges of some of those plates and along the ridge. I came back with the tan flesh, just a hint of the golden brown in it though, kind of make it a little more yellowy skin, because that's kind of what that aged hide colored is from Speedpaint. Then I did a skim of their flesh wash across the underbelly and the face area, you know, inside the mouth. I'm liking their washes more as I use them. Then I took a little Army Painter light tone. I just wanted to kind of transition things a little better on those leg highlights, the tusks, things. They just needed something there. Just a thin glaze of it. Then I used up the flesh wash I had on the rock. It had already kind of had some red over gray. That was a pretty gnarly print though, so it was broken off on the back. So this was definitely one of my test models.
No more Stingtail!
Alright, so let's wrap this one up. Want to run through some photos here and call it good for the Stingtails. Hopefully some of these color palettes I did will help you in your color choices when you paint these up. And the next episode, I'm still going through that initial box on the expansion. Not ready to take on the big dreadnought yet, but you know, there's the terrain in there and I think at least one or two other little critters, so I'll surprise you with something here in the next week or two, hopefully. I'm trying to get back into a more consistent painting schedule. Winter's coming, so that means doom and gloom outside, darkness, lousy weather, and more time to paint, so bonus. Anyhow, thanks for stopping by, and I will see you soon.